5 generations of murder, one family, and the trial that invented justice itself. Every murder in this story begins at a dinner table, and the first guest is already smiling. For 5 generations, one family will answer blood with blood, fathers, sons, and daughters, none of them spared. And it all starts with one man, a king, climbing a mountain no mortal was ever meant to climb. His name is Tantalus, son of Zeus, rich beyond counting, beloved beyond reason, and hungry beyond cure. Tonight, the clouds part for him. Olympus itself opens its gates and calls him to dinner. No mortal has ever sat at this table. The gods pour him nectar and treat him as a son. Ambrosia glows in golden bowls. The air itself hums with a light that has never known death. Zeus watches from the head of the table, proud of the boy, blind to what pride is feeding. Tantalus tastes ambrosia, and something in him tilts. Mortal food will never be enough again. He looks around the shining hall, and a quiet question takes root. What separates these gods from him? The honor should humble him. Instead, it curdles. Every gift becomes proof that he deserves more. So he steals, a flask of nectar hidden in his robes, carried down the mountain like a trophy. In his palace below, he pours immortality for his friends and laughs at how easy it was. Mortal lips touch the drink of gods. Word spreads through the city. The king shares heaven itself. He goes further. The secrets the gods speak over dinner, he sells them to mortal ears for worship. Each betrayal goes unpunished, and each silence from the sky makes him bolder. He tells himself the thunder would have come by now. The sky stays clear. The feasts continue. A new thought forms, colder than the first. Perhaps the gods do not see everything after all. Perhaps their knowledge is a bluff. Perhaps a clever man could prove it and stand their equal. Zeus feels the theft the way a father feels a lie, not yet spoken, already growing. But he says nothing. He gave his son a seat among gods. He will not believe it wasted. Below the mountain, Tantalus rules a kingdom of gold, and none of it tastes like nectar anymore. At night, he stands on his terrace and stares up at Olympus, no longer in awe, in appetite. He watches his own son, Pelops, run through the courtyard, bright and beloved, his greatest treasure. And somewhere in the dark of him, treasure and temptation begin to look like the same thing. A crime is coming, and the debt it opens will pass from father to son like a crown. His children will inherit it. Their children will inherit it. Blood answering blood until someone finds a way to stop it. Palaces will fall for it. Fleets will sail for it. Children not yet born will pay for what this man does next. Ask the question now, because the whole story hangs on it. Can such a debt ever be paid? Tantalus does not ask. He plans. If the gods see everything, let them prove it. He will set a table of his own. He will invite Olympus down to dine with him. And to test their sight, he needs a dish no god could fail to recognize. In the courtyard, Pelops looks up at his father, and his father smiles back. The invitations go out. The fires are lit. And in the kitchen, a great cauldron begins to boil. To test the gods, he needed a sacrifice they would never suspect. Midnight in the palace of Sipylus, and the kitchen doors are barred from the inside. Tantalus works alone tonight. He has sent every servant away, every guard, every witness. Because the king of Sipylus has decided to ask a question no mortal has ever dared. Do the gods truly see everything, or do they only claim to? Tonight he will know. It is not enough that the gods love him. He needs to know if they can be fooled. Steam climbs from the great cauldron and coils along the ceiling like a living thing. In the courtyard below, a wooden horse lies on its side where a boy left it. No one calls his name. No one will call it in this palace again. Somewhere in the dark, A night bird cries once from the cypress trees and falls silent. Upstairs, the great hall blazes with light. Gold plates, perfumed oil, a feast fit for heaven. And heaven accepts. Light gathers over the mountain as the gods come down to dine. Zeus arrives first, filling the doorway, and every torch in the hall bows flat before him. One by one, the immortals take their seats, radiant, amused, curious about their mortal favorite. Demeter comes last. She moves like winter, gray and hollow, searching every shadow for her stolen daughter. Grief has eaten her from the inside. She sits without seeing the room at all. The immortals glance at her with pity. None of them imagine what that emptiness will permit tonight. And here is Tantalus, smiling, bowing, the perfect host, with steam still on his hands. He claps and the covered dishes come in, silver domes catching the firelight. He sets the finest dish before Zeus himself, and his smile never wavers. Watch his eyes. He is not serving a meal. He is performing an experiment. Every host fears his guests will see through him. Tantalus fears they will not. The lids rise. Steam rolls across the table like fog off a cold river. The gods lean forward. Then, all at once, the hall goes utterly, terribly silent. Zeus stares down at the plate. His hand stops in the air above it. He knows. They all know. Gods recognize what mortals cannot, and this meal has a name. Around the table, hands freeze mid-reach. Cups halt at lips. Nothing breathes. Pelops, the boy who raced the wind on the mountainside. This is where his father sent him. But at the far end of the table, one goddess has not stopped. Demeter, staring through the walls toward a daughter who is not there, raises her hand. She eats. One small piece, a portion of the shoulder. She does not even taste it. And then the horror breaks over the table like a wave over a low ship. Zeus rises, and the room rises with him, wind screaming through the hall, torches dying. Plates scatter. The great table splits. The feast Tantalus built is unmade in a heartbeat. Tantalus backs against the wall, and for the first time in his life, he is small. He wanted to know if the gods see everything. Now he knows. They see everything. Lightning whitens the mountain, and far below the palace, the whole sleeping valley flinches awake. Inside, the hall stands ruined and dark. The gods do not look at the king. They look at the covered dishes, at what is left of a child who trusted his father. Demeter presses a hand to her mouth, understanding at last what her grief has swallowed. Zeus looks down at the boy's place at the table, and his fury turns to something else. But gods can do what mortals cannot. Slowly, gently, they begin to gather the boy back together. The gods do not forgive, but first they rebuild. In a hall of white fire, immortal hands move above a table of light, patient and tender, gathering what was broken. Zeus stands over the work, storm eyes soft for once, willing a mortal child back across the border of death. Beneath a veil of glow, a small silhouette takes shape, knitting itself whole out of brightness and the gods' quiet mercy. Then the light falters. Something is missing. One shoulder stays empty, a gap where no power of heaven finds anything to restore. Demeter steps forward, the goddess of harvests, her face lowered. She knows where the missing piece has gone. She carries that grief alone. She takes a tusk of pure ivory and carves through the night, shaping a shoulder smoother than anything born of flesh. The gods set the ivory into the gap, and white light seals it, a pale crescent gleaming against the boy's skin. Breath returns. The chest rises. Pelops opens his eyes to a ring of immortal faces and does not know he ever died. He stands, and heaven goes quiet. The boy is more beautiful than before, remade by gods, marked forever at the shoulder. That ivory will never tan, never age, never let him forget. Every heir of his blood will be born knowing the story. Then the tenderness ends. The gods turn all together toward the man who set his son upon the table. Tantalus stands alone on the marble, the king who tested heaven, and thunder gathers in the roof of the world. Zeus does not rage, he simply points downward, and the floor of Olympus opens onto darkness without a bottom. Tantalus falls past the roots of the mountains, past the rivers of the dead, into a pool prepared just for him. He lands standing, sunk to his chin in cool, clear water, and above him hang boughs heavy with ripe fruit. For a moment he almost laughs, water at his lips, fruit at his fingertips. It looks like mercy. It is not. He bends to drink, and the pool drains away from his mouth, leaving dark mud cracking beneath his feet. He straightens, and the water climbs back to his chin, cool against his throat, offering everything, giving nothing. He reaches for the fruit, and a wind lifts the branches just beyond his fingers, gently, almost politely, forever. This is his eternity. Thirst in the middle of water, hunger under a roof of fruit, appetite without end. Ages later, mortals will need a word for wanting what hovers forever out of reach. They will use his name, tantalize. Above, the boy with the ivory shoulder cannot stay in heaven. The gods send Pelops down, back into the mortal world. He grows tall in the eastern kingdoms, a prince with horses swift as storm wind, a parting gift from the gods. But something came back with him from that table, a hunger in the blood, quiet for now, waiting for its hour. Then a story reaches him across the sea. A princess in the west, Iphigenia, the most contested bride in the world. Her father is a king who races every suitor to the death, and no man has ever survived the finish line. Above the gates of Pisa, pale trophies of fallen princes stare down the road, and Pelops orders his chariot made ready. 13 suitors have already lost that race. Pelops means to be the last man ever to run it. The restored son grows into a man with a kingdom to win. The road to Pisa runs white with dust, and Pelops drives it like a man already crowned. Then the gate rises out of the haze, and the gate is watching him. Skulls nailed above the arch, a row of 7 over a row of 6, 13 suitors turned to bone. Every one of them was young, everyone was fast, and everyone believed he would be the exception. This is the work of Oyanomous, king of Pisa, who races his daughter's suitors and never loses. An oracle promised the king would die by the hand of the man who marries her. So he made marriage a race, and the race a hunt, and the finish line a grave. His horses were bred by the war god, and they run faster than the north wind. On the wall above the skull stands Iphigenia, the prize, the prisoner, the reason. She has watched 13 men ride out for her, and 13 times she has watched the king ride back alone. Now she looks down at Pelops, and something in her decides he must not be 14. The rules are simple. The suitor takes the bride and runs, and the king hunts them down with a bronze spear. That night, Pelops stands beneath the skulls and understands that speed has never once been enough. He has God-given horses of his own, swift as tide race, and still he does not trust them. Because Tantalus taught his son one lesson before the fall, that every game can be fixed. So Pelops looks past the king and finds the small man who holds the king's reins. Myrtilus, the charioteer, who yokes the storm-bred horses every dawn and is paid in nothing but survival. In the dark by the stables, Pelops offers him half a kingdom for one small act of treason. All Myrtilus must do is pull 2 bronze linchpins and push wax into the empty sockets. The charioteer turns the bright pins over in his palm, weighs a lifetime of servitude, and says yes. Before the sun returns, his hands do quiet work in the stable, bronze slipping out, wax pressing in. Dawn comes red over Pisa, and the whole city gathers to watch a 14th man die. Pelops lifts Iphigenia into his chariot, and for the first time, the prize chooses the runner. Oenomaus takes his time, buckling bronze over his chest because the head start has never mattered. The signal falls, and Pelops' team explodes down the sacred road toward the far isthmus. Hooves hammer, dust towers, and Hippodamia grips the rail with both hands and does not look back. Behind them, the king mounts, levels his spear along the wind, and gives his horses their heads. The war-bred team devours the ground, and the Gat begins to die, stride by stride. 13 times he has run this road, and 13 times he has come home alone. But under his wheels, in the hot dark of the hubs, the wax is beginning to sweat. Pelops hears the thunder closing, close enough now to feel the breath of the king's horses. Hippodamia looks back at her father's spear and sees her whole life narrowing to one point. Then the left wheel shivers and the wax gives way all at once. The wheel leaps free, the axle bites earth, and the chariot of Oenomaus comes apart at full gallop. The horses run on with the wreck and the reins, dragging their king into the dust cloud. When the dust settles, there is only scattered timber on the road and a great stillness. Pelops slows his team, turns, and looks back at the end of 13 years of winning. The race is over. The king is gone, and the skulls above the gate come down at last. Pelops takes the crown, takes the bride, and in time, the whole southern land will wear his name. Only one man stands close enough to know how the wheel really came off. Myrtilus smiles at the new king and waits, patient as wax, for the payment he was promised. And the road they will take together runs high along the cliffs above a deep and waiting sea. Every victory in this family carries a body under it. The chariot climbs the coast road at evening, 3 riders high above a sea that shines like hammered bronze. Pelops holds the reins. Hippodamia sits beside him, and behind them rides Myrtilus, come to collect his prize, half the kingdom. That was the promise, whispered in the dark before the race that killed a king. But Pelops has been counting a different cost. The man who betrayed one master can betray another. He watches the charioteers' clever hands, the hands that pulled the pins, and decides they know too much. The road narrows. Wind flattens the grass. Far below, the water darkens from bronze to iron. Myrtilus leans in to name his reward, and the young king lets go of the reins. One push. A dark figure leaves the chariot and hangs against the bright sky, arms wide, holding nothing. He falls a long time, long enough to understand who did this, long enough to answer it. Falling, Myrtilus curses Pelops and every child of Pelops and every child of those children forever. The sea closes over him like a door. The white mark of his falling fades. The words stay. A curse needs no body. It climbs back up the cliff on the wind and settles on the victor. Hippodamia stares at the empty place where the charioteer stood. She says nothing. In this family, silence is survival. Pelops drives on without looking back. Behind him, the sea smooths itself flat, keeping what it was given. He tells himself it was justice. A traitor earned a traitor's wage. Surely the gods will understand. But the gods keep accounts. Somewhere above the clouds, a father's old debt has just gained interest. That night, the coldness finds him, a chill in the wedding halls that no fire can drive out. So Pelops raises a tomb for the man he killed and pours honey and wine into the earth. It changes nothing. Guilt can be buried, a curse cannot. It waits in the blood like winter seed. Still, the world sees only triumph. A tyrant gone, a bride won, a throne taken in a single day. And Pelops rules well. Grain fills the storehouses, roads knit the valleys, envoys bow in his bright doorway. Hippodamia gives him sons, and the palace rings with running feet like a struck and singing bell. From outside, the house of Pelops looks blessed beyond any house in Greece. The curse likes it that way, because a curse from the sea is patient. It lets the tree grow tall before it splits the trunk. And this tree will grow taller than any king dares dream. The whole southern land will take his name. Golden cities will rise behind walls of giant stone, and a gold-sheathed scepter will pass into his hand. But look closer into the nursery of that shining house where two small brothers sleep side by side. Two boys, equal in blood, equal in pride, equal in hunger, and only one throne to share. For a while, the cursed house looks golden. The years are kind to the man who won a kingdom with a race. Pelops grows rich, then powerful, then something more than powerful. He grows into legend. Kings bend to him. Cities send tribute. His herds cover the hills like drifting cloud shadow. And when men speak of the great southern peninsula of Greece, they no longer name its rivers. They name him. The Peloponnese, the island of Pelops, a whole land wearing one man's name. Few mortals are ever so mighty that geography itself surrenders. Pelops is one of them. Mightiest of the young cities rising in his golden world is a fortress on a stony hill. Rich in gold, roofed in glory, guarded by walls that stagger belief. The stones are so vast that later ages will swear no human hands could stack them. They will say the Cyclopes built these walls, one-eyed giants hauling boulders in the dark. Cyclopean walls, a fortress fit for the mightiest family the Greek world has ever seen. From its highest terrace, a man can see a whole land that answers to the name of Pelops. In his high hall, Pelops holds the emblem of everything he has won. A scepter, an olive branch sheathed in hammered gold, heavy as a small sword. It is more than a stick of office. It is the family made solid. Whoever holds this scepter rules the golden land. It will pass down the bloodline like a second bloodstream. Men whisper that the gods themselves shaped it, that Zeus once held it in his hand. Fathers will hand it to sons for generations, and with it, everything else the family carries. Because this family carries more than gold. Somewhere beneath the treasure, a curse is waiting. But curses are quiet things. For now, the House of Pelops knows only sunlight. And in that sunlight, two small boys are growing into princes of everything. Atreus, the elder, broad-shouldered, watchful, a boy who counts what he owns. Thyestes, the younger, quick, charming, a boy who counts what his brother owns. Its brother, they ride together, hunt together, learn the sword together. Everyone says they are inseparable. In the training yard they wrestle, and neither boy will ever let the other win. Everyone is watching the wrong thing because love is not the current running between them. Watch their eyes instead, at feasts when the scepter passes near their father's hand. Two gazes lock onto the same golden object. Two hungers, perfectly equal, perfectly opposed. Their father conquered a kingdom. They have conquered nothing. They have only inherited wanting. And here is the flaw in the golden house, seated in plain sight. Two brothers, one throne, one scepter. The arithmetic does not work and everyone pretends not to notice. Pelops grows old watching them, and something in the old king's face tightens. He of all men knows what a hungry young man will do for a crown. He won his own bride and kingdom through a rigged race and a broken promise. Now he watches his sons circle each other like the chariot wheels of that old race, slow and patient. Time does what time does. The great king fades, and the golden land holds its breath. For the throne of Mycenae will soon stand empty, waiting for one brother to claim it. And the city will ask the gods for a sign, a mark of gold to crown the rightful king. Far out in the hills, a flock grazes under gathering clouds, and one shepherd stops walking. Because something has just been born there. Something with wool of living gold. Two brothers, one throne, one sign from heaven. The shepherd runs, down through wet grass, through the waking flock, toward the city, carrying impossible news. Atreus climbs to the high pasture himself, and there it stands, a lamb burning softly with gold. Every strand of its fleece holds light. The clouds part above it. The other sheep keep their distance. Atreus knows exactly what this is, a sign from the gods, proof that heaven has chosen him. He should offer it back to the gods. Instead, he locks its golden fleece inside a cedar chest. The chest sits in the dark of his house, and gold hidden in the dark starts to rot things. Because Mycenae needs a king. The throne stands empty behind the lion gate, and an oracle has spoken. The crown must go to a son of Pelops. There are two, and they have hated each other for years. Thyestes stands before the elders and makes an offer. Let the throne go to whoever can show a golden lamb. Atreus almost laughs. He agrees at once. He believes the contest is already over, the gold already his. He does not see his wife watching him. Arab, queen of his house, keeper of his keys. For months she has been slipping through moonlit corridors to Thyestes, his brother, her secret. Thyestes asked her for one thing, whispered against her hair, and love makes a door of every wall. So one night, Arab kneels before the cedar chest, lifts the lid, and gold light floods her face. She carries the fleece through the sleeping palace wrapped in dark wool, her heart hammering like a thief's. By morning, it lies in Thyestes' hands. He smiles down at it. Now the trap belongs to him. Assembly Day. The whole city climbs to the citadel. Elders, soldiers, farmers, all come to watch heaven choose. Atreus steps forward first, arms wide, ready to send for his miracle and take his crown. Then Thyestes raises the golden fleece above his head, and the crowd's roar breaks against the stones. Atreus stares. The world drops out from under him. That gold was locked behind his own doors. He turns to Arab. She is looking anywhere else, and something cold begins to form behind his eyes. The elders have no choice. The sign is the sign. Thyestes mounts the stone steps and takes the throne. That night, Atreus stands alone under the sky and asks the one witness who saw everything. Zeus, high above the world, the king of the gods, weighs two brothers, a stolen fleece, a broken bed. Zeus despises a cheated game. He sends his answer down to Atreus like a spark in the dark. So Atreus returns to the assembly with one last wager. If the sun runs backward, the throne is his. Thyestes laughs from the throne. The sun cannot run backward. He agrees before the whole city. That evening, every eye in Mycenae turns west, where the sun slides down toward the sea. Then the light shudders. The sinking sun halts on the horizon, trembling like a wheel caught mid-turn. Slowly, impossibly, it climbs back up the sky. It just descended, dragging the whole day into reverse. Shadows swing the wrong way across the citadel. Birds scatter. The city falls to its knees in terror. The sun sets where it should have risen, in the east, and darkness comes down like a verdict. No one argues with a sky like that. Thyestes descends the steps with the eyes of the city on him. Atreus takes the throne, and the scepter of Pelops settles into his fist like it was made for it. His first command as king: exile. Thyestes is driven out through the lion gate with nothing. At the gate, Thyestes looks back once, and what he sees in his brother's face is worse than hatred. Because Atreus has done the arithmetic, only one person could have opened that chest: his wife. For his brother. He sits on his one throne all night, perfectly still, and by dawn his rage has become a plan. He will not send an army after his brother. He will send something far more dangerous: an invitation. What Atreus does next will darken the sun. The invitation travels light. one rider, one sealed letter, and inside it the single word an exile prays for: forgiveness. Far from Mycenae, Thyestes reads it twice, 3 times, searching the words for a trap he cannot find. He wants to believe it. That is the genius of the letter. It asks nothing except what he already longs for. He has sons, young boys born in exile, who know Mycenae only as a word their father says in his sleep. So Thyestes packs what little exile leaves a man, takes his children's hands, and turns toward home. The road climbs through pale hills toward the Lion Gate, and every step the boys run ahead laughing. Above them, the citadel waits, golden and patient, the way a trap waits, which is to say, perfectly still. The gates open. Atreus stands in the sunlight with his arms spread wide, and his smile is flawless. The brothers embrace before the whole city, and the crowd cheers, because from a distance, mercy and hunger look alike. Thyestes weeps into his brother's shoulder. He is home. He has decided to believe that word means safety. Only the boys notice how quiet the servants are, how the guards watch the children instead of the road. Atreus announces a feast of reconciliation. Tonight, the house of Pelops will sit at one table again. All afternoon, the palace fills with music and wood smoke, and Thyestes lets himself laugh for the first time in years. Then Atreus kneels to the children and offers them a wonder, a tour of the palace their father grew up in. The boys look to Thyestes. He nods. It is the last permission he will ever give them. Atreus leads them down a corridor where the torches burn low, past an altar of Zeus, into the dark. A door closes. This story will not follow him through it. Some rooms, even a story, refuses to enter. Outside, the ravens lift from the rooftops all at once, as if the stones themselves had shrugged them off. The wind drops, the fountains falter. Far above Mycenae, the afternoon light turns the color of old bronze. In the kitchens, cooks work with their eyes down, and no one speaks, and no one asks what they are making. By the corridor door, 2 pairs of small sandals wait in a neat row for owners who will not return. Atreus returns to the feast hall alone. He washes his hands slowly, carefully, like a man finishing a prayer. The feast begins at dusk, though dusk has come early, as if the daylight cannot bear to stay. The dish set before him is rich and steaming, prepared, Atreus says, from the finest the house can offer. Thyestes eats. He is hungry, he is happy, he is home. Across the table, Atreus does not touch his plate. He only watches. There is a stillness in his face that no living thing should ever be watched with. Somewhere in the meal, Thyestes asks where his sons are. Atreus smiles and promises they will join him soon. He signals. The doors open. 2 servants carry in a great silver platter, covered, and set it before their guest. The hall goes quiet. Even the fires seem to lean away. Thyestes looks at the cover and feels nothing yet. Atreus lifts the lid himself. He wants to be the one. He has waited so patiently to be the one. The story does not look at the platter. It looks at Thyestes and watches a living man end without dying. His face empties. His hands rise halfway to his mouth and forget the rest. Then Thyestes understands what he has eaten. The scream that comes out of him is not a sound a man makes. It is a sound an age makes, ending. It tears through the hall, up through the stone, out over the city, and the sky itself recoils. High above the sea, the sun hides its face, and the light drains out of the day rather than watch. Atreus stands in the wreck of his triumph and smiles because he thinks this is what winning feels like. The gold on the wall still shines, the towers still stand, and none of it will ever be clean again. Thyestes grips the table's edge and hauls himself up, and in the ruin of his chest, words are gathering. Grief this size does not stay a scream. It is turning into something with a shape, something aimed. When it leaves his mouth, it will not be a cry. It will be a curse on all who bear his brother's name. A curse, spoken over a feast, never stops feeding. He drives the table over with one motion, gold cups ringing across the stone, and the curse comes down. It falls on every man who will ever bear his brother's name, on sons, on grandsons, on the unborn. Atreus does not flinch. He wears the crown. But something in the hall grows colder than the night outside. The gods hear it. Somewhere above the smoke, old powers that punish blood turn their faces toward Mycenae. Thyestes walks out through the great gate, and the darkness takes him in like an old friend. He carries nothing out of Mycenae but his life. Exile, in time, gives him one thing more: a son, born in the hills long after the banquet, the last child his broken line will ever have. Thyestes names him Aegisthus and lays on him the only inheritance an exile has left: a purpose. His father remembers for both of them. Every night, over the fire, Thyestes gives his son a single inheritance: Theo. Not gold, not land. One word pressed into the child like a brand: remember. Aegisthus learns to walk on stones that hate Mycenae. He learns his letters in the shape of a grudge. Before he can hunt, before he can shave, he knows the name Atreus, the way other boys know prayers. He is being raised the way a smith raises a blade, slowly, patiently, for one purpose only. And in Mycenae, the sun rises over the Lion Gate as if nothing happened at all. Atreus rules on. Tribute rolls through the gate, the storerooms fill, and the city gleams like a struck coin. If the king dreams badly, no one ever hears of it. Kings do not confess. They build higher walls. And behind those walls, two boys are growing into the strongest young men in Greece. Agamemnon the elder, broad, loud, hungry, born certain that the world owes him a throne. Menelaus the younger, gentler, golden, the kind of man good fortune loves at first sight. They race chariots on the plain below the citadel, wheels thundering, servants cheering, the whole world theirs. They wrestle, they hunt, they master the spear and the horse, everything a royal son should learn. Everything except one thing. No one tells them what their father served at that long table. No one tells them about the uncle in the dark or the cousin learning their names by firelight. Atreus teaches his sons strength, pride, command. He teaches them nothing about the debt carried in their name, because that is how a curse survives. It hides inside the silence of fathers. The boys inherit the debt without ever seeing the ledger, and it grows quietly, like interest in the dark. Sometimes a shepherd in the far hills sees a thin man and a boy watching the city from a ridge. They never come closer. They only watch the towers and count, and then turn back into the stones. At that golden noon, the watchers finally come down from the ridge. Aegisthus, grown, finds Atreus at his altar. The king falls, Thyestes takes back the throne, and the sons of Atreus flee south to Sparta with nothing. And far to the south, in Sparta, a river palace is raising two daughters of its own. Clytemnestra, dark-eyed and brilliant. Helen, so beautiful that kings already speak her name in whispers. The strongest sons in Greece, the most celebrated daughters in the world. Of course they will be joined. 2 weddings are coming, the grandest the age has ever seen, and the curse has been invited to both. The 3rd generation inherits everything, including the debt. With Spartan spears behind him, Agamemnon returns north and walks through the Lion Gate as its king. The lords of the Argolide kneel before him. The city that broke his father lays itself at his feet, and into his hands passes the scepter of Pelops, the golden staff that commands the Greek world. Zeus once held it. Pelops carried it across the sea. Every hand that has gripped it is dead. Agamemnon does not care. He is young, hungry, and suddenly the strongest king alive. South over the mountains rides his brother Menelaus, red-haired, quieter, watching the road to Sparta. In Sparta waits the prize of the age, Helen, the most beautiful woman the world has ever made. Every unmarried king in Greece has come for her. Heroes crowd her father's hall like storm clouds. Men who have never lost a battle stand in that hall, afraid to speak. Her father is terrified. So many armed suitors, one bride, the losers could rip Sparta apart. So he demands an oath. Every suitor must swear to defend whichever man wins her. They swear it laughing. It costs nothing, a formality, words thrown into the wind. Remember those words. Helen chooses Menelaus, the quiet brother, and the oath lies down to sleep like a seed in winter ground. Helen has a sister, Clytemnestra, dark where Helen is golden, steel where Helen is flame. Agamemnon looks at her the way he looks at cities, something magnificent that will belong to him. She looks back at him, and her eyes miss nothing. Remember that too. Then 2 weddings in one blaze of days, torches on every wall, wine in every cup, 2 kingdoms singing. Agamemnon and Clytemnestra crowned in golden Mycenae, Menelaus and Helen crowned in green Sparta. Sons of Atreus on 2 thrones, daughters of Sparta in 2 palaces, power stacked upon power. The house of Tantalus, twice cursed, twice exiled, now rules the world from mountain to sea. High on Olympus, the gods watch the torchlight burn. They have long memories. They remember a certain feast. This family's debt has never been paid. It has only been gathering interest. Years pass like calm water. Clytemnestra bears children in Mycenae, a son, daughters, a bright girl named Iphigenia. In Sparta, Helen bears a daughter, and Menelaus wakes happy every morning, amazed at his own luck. The scepter of Pelops gleams above 100 obedient cities. No king has ever ruled wider. This is the summit. Hold the picture: strong walls, full tables, sleeping children, brothers who love each other. Because a curse does not strike a house at its weakest, it waits for the top of the ark. And this curse has already chosen its doors. Not armies, not jealous uncles, not poison in the cup. It will come through the brides, through Helen's beauty, through Clytemnestra's patience, through the thrones themselves. Far to the east, across the bright sea, a city of high, pale walls glitters, Troy. In its palace lives a young prince who has just judged a beauty contest between 3 goddesses. He crowned the goddess of love, and she promised him the most beautiful woman in the world. She did not mention that this woman is already married to Menelaus in Sparta. Now Paris is building a ship, and Sparta keeps an open door for guests. The spark comes from Sparta. A ship with crimson sails slides into a Spartan harbor, and a young prince steps ashore, smiling like the morning. His name is Paris, Prince of Troy, and Sparta opens its doors because the guest law is holy here. Menelaus feasts him for 9 nights, wine, music, gifts, and across the firelight, Paris only watches the queen. Helen feels that gaze land on her like sunlight through a door she never knew was open. Far above, a goddess is keeping an old promise, and desire settles over the hall like warm smoke. Then a messenger, a death in Crete. Menelaus must sail at once for a kinsman's funeral. At the harbor, he clasps the hand of his guest and asks him to enjoy the palace. He trusts him. That night, the palace lies silent, and 2 shadows slip through moonlit corridors down toward the waiting sea. Helen goes with him, past the sleeping guards, past her own daughter's door, into the dark and the ship. By dawn, the crimson sails are a fleck on the horizon, carrying away the most beautiful woman alive. Menelaus comes home to open gates, quiet halls, and a bedroom holding nothing but her folded gown. He stands very still in that empty room, and the silence tells him everything he needs to know. This is more than a stolen wife. A guest has shattered the guest law, and Zeus himself guards that law. Menelaus does not weep. He saddles a horse and rides north for Mycenae toward his brother. Agamemnon listens from his throne, torchlight moving on his face, and his grief slowly sharpens into something else. Opportunity. Troy is the richest city in the world, and now the world has a reason to burn it. Because Agamemnon holds a key no other king holds, an oath sworn years ago by every king in Greece. When Helen chose a husband, every rejected suitor swore to defend that marriage against any man who broke it. Every rejected suitor is now a king with ships, and Agamemnon calls the debt due. Heralds gallop out from Mycenae to every throne in Greece, carrying one sealed reminder of what was sworn. And the kings come, from rocky islands, from horse plains, from mountain valleys, dragging their oath behind them. Harbors fill with ships, beaches vanish under bronze, smiths hammer through the night in 1,000 towns. Nothing like this has ever been gathered before. 100 kingdoms bound into one spear, aimed at Troy. Every army needs one commander. The kings look at the man whose call they answered, the king of Mycenae. Agamemnon stands before them and raises the scepter of Pelops, hammer forged by a god, high above his head. 10,000 spears roar their answer. The House of Atreus now commands every fighting man in Greece. But look closer at that scepter. It came down through Tantalus's line, and no hand that held it stayed clean. The greatest army in the world has just placed itself under the most cursed object in the world. In Mycenae, Clytemnestra watches her husband plan a war, their children playing in the courtyard below. The fleet gathers at a narrow bay called Aulis, the last anchorage on the road to Troy. 1,000 ships. 1,000 sails waiting for the wind that will carry them to war. And out on the water, without a sound, the wind begins to die. 1,000 ships wait on a single wind. The stillness spreads like a sickness. Flags hang dead against their poles. The sea flattens into gray glass. 1,000 ships sit pinned at Aulis, hulls groaning, ropes slack, an army caged between home and war. One day becomes 10. 10 becomes 40. The harbor water turns green and the grain runs low. Men sharpen swords with nothing to strike. Fights break out over bread. The muttering begins after dark. Sickness creeps between the tents. Fires burn low. Some men whisper that the gods have turned against this war. Agamemnon walks the tide line alone, king of a fleet that cannot move, listening to his army rot. Every sailor feels it. This is no weather. Something above them is holding the sea shut. So the kings send for Calchas, the seer who reads birds and fire, the man rulers fear to ask. He watches the sky for a day and a night. When he climbs down, his face is gray. Artemis, the goddess of the wild, has been offended, and she has closed the sea like a door. There is a price to open it. Calchas will not speak it before the army. He whispers it to the king. The wind will come back for one payment only. Agamemnon's eldest daughter given to the goddess on an altar. Iphigenia, the girl who runs to the gates when he comes home, the child who loves him best. He looks at the seer, then at the sea, then at nothing. There are choices no man should be given. Agamemnon refuses. He swears he will disband the army, burn the ships, and let Troy stand forever. For 9 days he holds. The wind holds too. The goddess is not in a hurry. Then Menelaus comes to his brother's tent, and the two kings stand face to face in the lamplight. Helen is stolen. The oath binds every king on this beach, and here, oaths are made of iron. But it is not only his brother. Word of the prophecy seeps through the camp like water through sand. The whole army now knows the price of the wind. and every man knows whose daughter can pay it. Idle armies do not simply go home. They turn on their generals, on their kings, on their kings' houses. Agamemnon sits through the night with the scepter of Pelops across his knees, and it has never felt heavier. He is Tantalus's blood. In this family, from the very beginning, the gods have been paid in children. By dawn, something behind his eyes has closed. He calls for wax, a tablet, a trusted messenger. He writes to Clytemnestra, not a warning, not a confession, an invitation to a wedding. The letter promises Iphigenia, a bridegroom beyond any mother's dream, Achilles, the greatest warrior alive. Twice he seals the letter. Twice he tears it open again with shaking hands. The third time, he lets it go. The messenger rides north through the dark, carrying a father's handwriting and a goddess's price. In Mycenae, Clytemnestra reads it by lamplight and laughs out loud. Her daughter married to Achilles. The palace erupts into joy. Chests are packed with gifts. Wedding garlands are woven through the halls. Iphigenia is fitted for her dress, saffron and gold, the color of flame and of mourning. Her mother braids her hair and tells her about the man she is going to marry. The girl glows. They set out together in a bright wagon, mother and daughter, laughing, rolling south toward the sea. Villagers wave as the wedding party passes. Iphigenia waves back. She has never been happier in her life. Behind them, Mycenae's gates swing shut. Ahead, the road runs straight to Aulis, to the ships, to her father. At the shoreline, Agamemnon watches the road. He cannot eat, he cannot sleep, he can only wait. The camp is quiet now. The soldiers know what is coming, and they do not say her name. And the wind, the dead wind, seems to lean in and listen, waiting to be paid. Because there is no bridegroom at the end of that road. There is an altar, and beside the altar, a knife. The price of the wind is a daughter. Dawn breaks over Aulis, and for the first time in weeks, 10,000 soldiers have something to watch. A chariot rolls down through the camp, ribbons on its rails, dust rising gold behind its wheels. Iphigenia stands tall in the car, dressed in saffron, bright as a flame against a gray shore. She is 15 years old, and she believes she is the luckiest girl in all of Greece. The soldiers part before her in silence, and not one of them can hold her gaze. She thinks it is reverence, grown men lowering their eyes before a bride on her wedding day. Clytemnestra scans the camp for wedding fires, for music, for garlanded tents, for a waiting bridegroom. There is no music. There are no fires. There is only a stillness that smells like fear. Agamemnon waits at the far edge of the camp, and he has aged 10 years in 10 days. Iphigenia runs to him with open arms, the way she has run to him all her life. He holds her the way a drowning man holds driftwood, and then he cannot look at her. That is the first thing she notices. Her own father will not meet her eyes. The second thing is the altar, stone and garlanded, standing where a wedding feast should stand. The third is Calchas beside it, robed in white, waiting the way only priests can wait. Understanding does not come all at once. It arrives in stages, each one colder than the last. She looks at the garlands on the stone. Brides wear garlands. So do the gifts men bring to altars. She looks down at her dress. Saffron for a wedding, saffron for an offering, the same bright color. She turns to her father, and his broken face tells her everything the letter never did. Clytemnestra understands one heartbeat later, and the cry she makes stops 10,000 hearts at once. Soldiers hold the queen back, 2 on each arm, and still they can barely keep her from the altar. Iphigenia does not run. There is nowhere to run. An entire army stands between her and the sea. She clings to her father's knees first, a child asking for her life, as if it were a favor. Then something in her changes. She stops begging. She lets go of him and stands up straight. If she must die so Greece can sail, she will die standing, unbound, with her chin lifted. She walks to the altar on her own feet. No one leads her. No one dares to touch her. A girl in a wedding dress shames 10,000 armored men into a silence deeper than the sea. Agamemnon lifts his hand to give the sign, and it shakes as though it belongs to another man. Calchas raises the knife high, and the morning sun turns its edge into a line of white light. Iphigenia looks up past him, at the gulls, at all the things that get to keep on living. The knife comes down, and every man in the army looks away in the same single instant. And in that same breath, wind pours over Aulis like a wave breaking across the whole world. Sails that hung dead for weeks snap full and taut, ropes sing. 1,000 hulls strain at anchor. The army roars with relief. Beside the smoking altar, Agamemnon stands very still and celebrates nothing. The smoke climbs thin and straight from the stone, then bends, slow and deliberate, toward Troy. Tantalus killed his son for pride, to test the gods. His great-grandson has killed his daughter for wind. At the camp's edge, the soldiers holding Clytemnestra feel her suddenly stop fighting against their grip. She has gone quiet. And her quiet is worse than any scream heard at Aulis today. She watches her husband walk toward his flagship, and her face closes like a door sealing shut. 1,000 ships catch the rising wind and turn their prows toward Troy and 10 years of war. And far behind them a palace stands undefended, waiting for the queen who is sailing home to fill it. The war takes 10 years. The queen needs only one night. She lands at Nauplia with salt in her hair and a dead daughter's name sewn shut behind her teeth. Clytemnestra climbs the road to Mycenae alone, and the lion gate swallows her like a mouth. The palace is hers now. No king, no garrison worth the name, only servants, silence, and time. She does not weep where anyone can see. She sits on the throne and begins to wait. And she is not the only one waiting. Out in the hill country, a man watches the road. Aegisthus, the last son of Thyestes, raised for one purpose, to collect his father's debt from this house. He walks through the lion gate with empty hands and a smile, and no spear rises to stop him. He comes as a guest. He stays as a comfort. Two hatreds circle each other and recognize kin. Her grief wants payment for Iphigenia. His birthright is vengeance on Atreus' line. The two hungers braid together. By winter, he sleeps in the king's chamber. By spring, the servants bow to him without being told. The queen has taken a new king, and every road out of Mycenae learns to carry news slowly. But a child watches from the corridors, Electra, the king's daughter, old enough to know what usurpers do next. Her little brother Orestes is the true heir, and heirs are the first thing new kings erase. So on a moonless night, she wraps the boy in a servant's cloak and carries him down the back stair. A trusted rider carries him north to Phocus, to a friendly hearth, to grow up out of reach. Electra stays behind in her father's stolen house and begins her own long count of the years. Then the years grind. 1, 2, 5, 8. The war across the sea refuses to end. Traders bring rumors of heroes dead and walls still standing, and two rulers grow easy in stolen rooms. But Clytemnestra never loses the thread. She sets a watchman on the palace roof with a single order. Watch the eastern peaks. The night Troy falls, fire will leap from mountain to mountain with the news. So the watchman lies on the cold tiles through frost and rain, propped on his elbows like a dog. A year of nights. He hums to keep himself awake. He fears the house beneath him more than winter. Then one night, far across the black water, the 10th year of the war ends. Troy is burning. The city that outlasted 1,000 ships falls in a single night, and the horizon glows like a forge. A signal flame is kindled on the heights above the ruin, and the news becomes light. It leaps to Lemnos. Lemnos flings it to Athos. Peak answers peak across the dark water. Faster than any ship could sail, the fire runs the islands like a torch race toward the Argolid hills. On the roof of Mycenae, the watchman sees a star where no star should be and cries out. Clytemnestra comes out into the night wind and watches the far beacon burn. She does not smile. She begins. Days later, sails on the horizon. Agamemnon, conqueror of Troy, steps onto the shore of the Argolis. 10 years since Aulis. 10 years since a father traded his daughter for wind. Nothing has been forgotten. Lay the whole decade on a single line, the way the queen has laid it, night after night. 1,000 ships sail for Troy, and the long clock of the war starts turning. 1 year in, Aegisthus enters the undefended palace, and an old debt walks through an open door. A year more, and the queen takes a new king, 2 revenges now sharing one throne. Then Electra smuggles Orestes out of the country, and the heir slips beyond the new king's reach. 6 slow years pass before a watchman is set on the roof to wait for beacon fire. In the 10th year, Troy burns, and the long waiting is suddenly over. That same night, the beacon fires cross the sea, flame answering flame from mountaintop to mountaintop. And Agamemnon lands in the Argolis, sailing home in triumph into 10 years of patience. On the shore, his men unload the spoils of Troy, and in his chariot sits a captive prophetess. Her name is Cassandra. She sees what is coming, and she already knows that no one will believe her. Tomorrow, the Conqueror rides through the Lion Gate, and his wife unrolls a welcome 10 years in the making. The king comes home to a woven crimson welcome. Dawn breaks over Mycenae, and the road below the citadel trembles with wheels that have not rolled home in 10 years. Agamemnon rides through the Lion Gate at last, gold on his shoulders, the dust of Troy still gray in his beard. The stone lionesses watch him pass beneath them, the same cold eyes that watched Atreus, the same patient silence. Behind him in the chariot stands a stranger, a young woman in white, her wrists bound with soft cord. Cassandra, princess of fallen Troy, priestess of Apollo, carried home as a prize by the man who burned her city. The crowd roars for its king, and 10 years of waiting breaks over him like a warm wave. Then the palace doors open at the top of the great stair, and Clytemnestra steps out into the light. She has rehearsed this smile for 10 years. It fits her face like a mask carved by a master. Her welcome pours down the steps, long and lavish, honey-ladled over a decade of patient hatred. She signals once, and her servants unroll a river of crimson cloth from the doorway to the chariot wheels. Crimson, the dye of kings, worth its weight in silver, woven for the feet of gods alone. She invites her husband to walk it, to come home the way heaven itself would come home. Agamemnon hesitates. Even he feels it. Some things a mortal man does not dare to trample. To crush such wealth underfoot is to boast before the gods, and this family knows what the gods do to boasters. He thinks of Tantalus. He thinks of the curse he carries like a second name. He should refuse. But she presses gently, asking what Priam would have done, asking whether victors should fear their own glory. 10 years of command have made him hungry for the taste of worship. He bends and unlaces his sandals, and the conqueror of Troy steps barefoot onto the crimson and walks slowly toward his own front door. Every step crushes a fortune. Every step tempts heaven. His wife watches him come with shining eyes. Behind them, forgotten in the chariot, Cassandra has gone very still, and her eyes are looking somewhere else. The god's gift is waking in her again. The visions come whether she calls them or not. She smells it first. Beneath the incense and the crushed flowers, something old is rising from the stones. old blood, generations of it, soaked so deep into this house that the rock itself remembers. She looks up, and the palace roof is crowded with small figures that no one else can see. Children, pale and patient, standing in a silent row along the roofline, holding out their empty hands. The sons of Thyestes, waiting above the door of the family that once served them at a feast. And behind the children stand darker shapes, women with burning eyes, the Furies perfectly at home here. Then the last vision takes her, and she sees what waits inside. Water, a net, an axe rising. She sees her own death standing quietly beside the king's, two shadows falling in the same hour. She cries out to the crowd, telling them everything, and every word is true and perfect and useless. Apollo's old curse holds firm. The people hear a foreign girl raving, and they pity her and believe nothing. This is the cruelty of her gift, not blindness, perfect sight with no one alive to share it. She could run. The gate stands open behind her, and the road runs all the way to the sea. But there is nowhere left to run to. Her city is smoke. Her gods have stopped answering her. So, Cassandra steps down from the chariot and walks toward the door, head high, a princess to the last. She knows exactly what waits on the other side of that threshold, and she walks in anyway. The great doors swing shut behind her, and the House of Atreus quietly holds its breath. Somewhere below, servants are heating water for the Conqueror's bath, and Clytemnestra goes down to tend it herself. 10 years she has waited to welcome her husband home, and the welcome is not finished yet. The bath is warm, the net is woven, and on the bathhouse wall, an axe waits for a hand. The bath is drawn, the net is ready. Agamemnon lowers himself into the warm water, and 10 years of war lift from his shoulders like smoke. Steam climbs to the rafters. Beyond the doorway, a shadow crosses the lamplight and stops. Clytemnestra enters with folded cloth in her arms, the way a wife carries a gift. He never sees the net until it is falling wide and slow as a fisherman's cast. The mesh settles over his arms and pulls tight. The conqueror of Troy cannot raise a hand. He heaves against the tangle. Water surges over the stone. The lamp flame bends and shivers. She lifts the axe from the wall. 10 years she has waited to feel its weight. On the wall, her shadow rises and falls, once, twice, a third time for the dead. Then stillness. The lamp gutters out, and steam drifts through the dark like a leaving soul. The king who commanded 1,000 ships will never give another order. The water goes quiet. Outside, the city still celebrates its king's return. No one hears what the bathhouse hears. At the threshold stands Cassandra. She has seen this room in vision since Troy burned. No one ever believed her. Now the one prophecy left is her own, and she walks toward it. She steps through the door with her head high. It closes behind her without a sound. Inside, the shadow of the axe rises once more. The last voice of Troy goes silent. Then the great doors of the palace swing open, and torchlight spills down the steps. Clytemnestra stands above the city, the axe still in her hands, and she is not ashamed. Behind her lie two shrouded forms. Below her, Mycenae gathers in the dark and stares. She gives them her reason, and the reason has a name: Iphigenia, a girl in a saffron dress traded for Winds of Aulis while her father watched. He gave their daughter to the gods. She has given him to the earth. She calls it justice. The word rolls across the courtyard like distant thunder. It is the oldest word in this house. Atreus used the word when he served the feast. Agamemnon used it at Aulis. Now she uses it. And out of the shadow steps Aeschylus, son of Thyestes, smiling like a man repaid. He has waited in exile and in shadow, patient as winter, while other men fought at Troy. He was born into exile for one purpose, after Atreus set that feast in this very hall. His brothers never left this house alive. He names this night Justice for them. 2 avengers stand over one dead king, holding the same word, and both of them believe it. By morning, Aegisthus sits on the throne of Atreus in the hall where the feast was served. In his fist rests the scepter of Pelops, handed down the generations like the curse itself. Mycenae bows. What else can a city do? The stone lions above the gate say nothing. The palace learns new footsteps. A usurper's guards on the stairs, a usurper's seal on the doors. Somewhere beneath the earth, the tally is even. Every death in this house has answered another. That is the trap. The answer is always another death, and every answer asks a new question. Tantalus began it. Pelops carried it. Atreus sharpened it. Now the circle has closed on itself. Vengeance has eaten the avengers. There is no one left in this house with clean hands, except that the dead king has children, and the house has not finished counting them. In a cold corridor, a girl presses her back to the wall and listens to the feast below. Her name is Electra. Tonight she loses a father. Tomorrow she will live among his killers. She does not scream, she does not run. She begins very quietly to wait. In the ashes of the house, an ember waits. 7 years pass, the palace still stands, the fires still burn, and the murderers sleep in the king's bed. Aegisthus sits the throne of Mycenae now, and in his fist he grips the scepter of Pelops. He wears another man's crown in another man's hall, and he never walks anywhere without armed men. Clytemnestra rules beside him, gold at her throat, iron in her voice, and no grief anywhere on her face. But one ghost still moves through these corridors in daylight, and she carries water like a slave. Her name is Electra, daughter of the murdered king, kept in rags in her father's own house. Her hair is cropped short, the mark of mourning, and she has never once let it grow back. They give her a servant's work so she will learn her place. Instead, she learns patience. She eats at the low table. She bows to her father's killers. She forgets nothing. The court calls her mad. Better a mad daughter than a dangerous one, so they let her live. At night, when the palace sleeps, she slips through a side gate with a jar of honey and wine. Agamemnon lies outside the walls in a grave without honor. No mound, no marker, no offerings allowed. Electra kneels in the dark and pours the wine into the earth, slowly, the way the rites demand. She lays a cut lock of her hair on the bare ground, the only crown she can give him. She whispers to the earth. She tells her father the one thing that keeps her heart beating. Somewhere beyond the mountains, across the water, her brother is alive. Orestes, the last son of Agamemnon. Every year, he grows taller in his mind. Every year, his hands grow closer to a sword. She keeps his name like an ember cupped in her palms, and she feeds it every night. Aegisthus knows the boy exists. He sends men across the sea to look. The sea keeps it secret. And in the great bedchamber behind doors of bronze, the queen has stopped sleeping well. Clytemnestra dreams the same dream. She gives birth to a serpent and wraps it in swaddling cloth. In the dream, she nurses it like a child, and the serpent strikes the breast that feeds it. She waits in the dark with her hand at her chest, and she knows what the dream means. The dead do not stay quiet in this family. The dead send messages. At dawn, she orders offerings carried to Agamemnon's grave, wine and oil in the hands of trembling servants. As if a jar of wine could settle that account, as if a murdered king could be bribed. Electra watches the offerings arrive at the grave she has tended in secret, and she almost laughs. The queen is afraid. After all these years, the queen of Mycenae is finally afraid. They pass in a corridor, mother and daughter, and their eyes meet, and neither one looks away. The whole house feels it now. Servants speak softly. Guards check the gates twice. Something is coming. That night, Electra pours her offering and asks the earth for one gift only, that her brother come home. And far to the north, on the stone shoulders of a holy mountain, a young man climbs toward Delphi. He carries questions for the god who lives there. Apollo has been waiting years to answer them. At Delphi, a son is handed an impossible command. The doors of the temple stand open. Orestes steps out of the sunlight into smoke and cold stone. The air tastes of laurel and something older. Painted columns rise into darkness. The floor hums underfoot. This is the navel of the world. The stone that marks the center of everything sits here, sweating smoke. He has climbed for days to ask one question. What does a son owe a murdered father? The smoke stirs. Light gathers where no lamp burns, gold and terrible, and Apollo is simply there. The god has waited years for this boy. The answer was written before the question was ever asked. The command falls like an arrow loosed years ago. Orestes must go home and kill his father's killers. Both of them, the man who wears the crown and the woman who once sang Orestes to sleep. The word for what the god asks has a weight of its own, matricide. No river washes it clean. Orestes waits for the god to soften the sentence. Apollo does not soften. Gods never do. Then the god shows him the price of refusal, a father's ghost, unavenged, rising from a restless grave. It would hunt him across every sea, bar him from every altar, whisper in every dark room until he broke, haunted if he refuses, damned if he obeys. Orestes stands between two fates 20 years old, shaking. To make him understand, the god unrolls the whole account, a family ledger 4 generations deep. The ledger opens with Tantalus, the king who tested the gods with a feast made from his own son. Below him, Pelops, the boy the gods restored, who won a crown by treachery and carried away a curse. Pelops leaves 2 sons, Atreus, who answered his brother's betrayal with the most terrible supper ever served. Beside Atreus, Thyestes, who stole his brother's queen and paid for it with his children. From Atreus comes Agamemnon, who bought his war with a daughter and came home to an axe. Beside him, Menelaus, whose stolen wife Helen lit the fire that demanded that daughter's life. From Thyestes comes Aeschylus, born in exile after the feast, raised on one story and sharpened for one revenge. And at the bottom of the page, beneath 4 generations of debt, one name remains, Orestes. Every generation has paid in kind. Every payment has opened a new account. The ledger never balances. Orestes stares at his inheritance. Not gold, not glory, a debt that can only be settled in his mother's blood. He searches the ledger for another road. There is none. Every path to justice runs through the woman who bore him. He is the last coin the curse can spend. Whatever he does, the ledger closes with him. He thinks of her hands, the same hands that held him, that lifted the axe, that rule Mycenae still. Far to the south, Clytemnestra sleeps soundly in a stolen palace, certain the past is safely buried. Beside her throne, Aeschylus wears a dead king's crown and drinks from a dead king's cup. Neither remembers the boy smuggled into the night all those years ago. That is their first mistake. In the temple, Apollo makes his one promise. When the deed is done, the god himself will shield him. A god's promise is a contract. Orestes rises to his full height and accepts the terms. He leaves at dawn. Behind him, the sanctuary smokes. Ahead, the whole south of Greece tilts toward Mycenae. He walks down out of the holy mountain like a man carrying something heavier than any pack. The sky over the mountains darkens as he goes, as if the weather itself has read the ledger. Days pass. Shepherds nod to a quiet traveler. None of them see the sentence he carries. He rehearses it every night by the fire, the door, the lie, the blade, the face at the end. Then the hills open, and there it is, the plain of Argos and the gray walls of Mycenae. Stone lions stand above the gate, worn blind by wind, guarding a house that devours its own. No one behind those walls knows his face anymore. The boy who fled is gone. A stranger is coming, and the stranger's first stop is not the palace. It is a lonely grave mound where a sister still keeps watch. The debt comes due in his mother's own hall. The stranger climbs the grave mound at first light and lays a cut lock of hair upon the cold stone. Electra finds it there. She holds the lock against her own hair. The color matches perfectly. He steps from the olive trees. She backs away, staring at a tall stranger with her father's face. Then she knows. The boy she smuggled out has come home, a man carrying a sword. Brother and sister kneel at the grave and pour dark wine into the earth for the dead king. They call on their father. They ask him to lend his strength to what must happen tonight. Orestes carries a god's command. Apollo has ordered the deaths and promised horrors if he refuses. The plan is simple and terrible. He will knock at his mother's door carrying news of his own death. At dusk, he walks through the lion gate, hooded, dust-caked, a traveler nobody knows. He tells the queen her son is dead, burned to ash in a far country. Clytemnestra's face flickers. Grief, perhaps, or relief. 10 years of dread have just dissolved. She opens her house to the stranger. She feeds him at the hearth where his father once sat. Aegisthus comes home smiling. The last threat to his stolen throne has died in a foreign land. He walks into the inner room to hear the good news for himself. The doors swing shut. A lamp gutters. A shadow rises on the wall and another falls. Aegisthus dies first. The queen hears the sound and understands everything at once. The dead traveler is standing in her house. She calls for the axe that killed her husband. No one brings it. The servants have vanished. The door opens. Orestes stands in the frame, and mother and son look at each other. She does not run. She does the one thing no god prepared him for. She bears the breast that nursed him and asks her child if he remembers. His sword arm drops. The avenger of Agamemnon is suddenly a boy standing in front of his mother. The moment stretches. Outside, the wind dies. Even the fire in the hearth seems to hold its breath. He weighs it all. A father cut down in his own bath, a sister buried alive in grief, a god's absolute command. And against all of it, one memory of warmth, older than language, pulling his arm down. Then Apollo's voice returns to him, cold and golden, reminding him what disobedience costs. He raises the sword. He tells her the dead outnumber the living in this family and walks forward. She retreats into the inner room, into shadow, and the doors close on them both. The torches gutter along the hall. Somewhere behind the cedar doors, the House of Atreus keeps its oldest promise, silence. Then the doors open and Orestes walks out alone into the torchlight, changed forever. He proclaims justice to the empty hall. The word sounds strange in his mouth, thin and wrong. He stands where his mother stood 10 years ago, over shrouded forms, holding the same speech about necessity. The avenger has become the thing he avenged. The curse has simply changed hands again. On its stand, the scepter of Pelops gleams, patient, waiting for its next doomed keeper. Then the torchlight bends. In the corners of the hall, something gray begins to move. Shapes like women, but wrong. Hair of coiling shadow, eyes that weep, a slow darkness. Electra sees nothing. The servants see nothing. Only Orestes sees them, and they are looking at him. They are the Furies, older than Zeus, older than mercy. They punish the spilling of a mother's blood. They do not care that a god commanded it. They only care whose son he is. They rise from the corners, one by one, whispering his name in his mother's voice. Orestes backs toward the door his father once entered, the sword shaking in his hand. Soon he will run and keep running with gray shapes at his heels. The hunt of the Furies begins, and it will not stop, not at any shrine, until someone builds a thing the world has never seen. Blood cannot wash away blood. Something new must. It begins slowly. He does not run at first. He walks out of Mycenae like a man already dead, eyes open, seeing nothing. Behind him come the Grey Ones, the Furies, older than the gods, born to punish the murder of kin. They heard Apollo's command. They do not care. A mother's blood is a mother's blood, and it cries out. He cannot sleep. Every time his eyes close, the darkness fills with wings and whispering, and he wakes, screaming. So he runs. Through the hills of Argos, through rain and gray daylight, a king's son with no country. The Furies do not tire. They do not hunger. They have hunted longer than cities have had names. They are not monsters, not really. They are the law before law, and the law says, pay. Then, through the mist, the cliffs of Parnassus, Delphi, the bright god's house hanging between stone and sky. Apollo is waiting. He commanded this. Now he must answer for it, and the god of light looks troubled. The purification begins. Water from the sacred spring, smoke of laurel, light poured over a kneeling man like rain. For 1 hour Orestes is quiet. For 1 hour the whispering stops. He sleeps on the temple floor. Then he wakes, and they are there, seated in a ring around him, patient as stone, waiting. Apollo's rites can wash a man clean. They cannot unmake what he did. The Furies answer to older law. The map remembers the flight first rode out from Mycenae over the mountains to the shrine at Delphi. And now a second road, longer, from Delphi east to Athens, where Apollo says a new thing waits. Athens, Athena's city. Apollo sends him there to seek something no man has ever been given, a judgment. Not a knife, not a curse, answered with a curse, a hearing. Words weighed against words before a court. Orestes does not understand. Nobody could. The thing he is being sent toward has never existed anywhere on earth. But he goes. Down the mountain, through valleys and passes, the gray shapes flowing after him like smoke. Days blur. He forgets what bread tastes like. He forgets his own name for hours at a time. 4 generations of answers. Tantalus, Pelops, Atreus, Agamemnon, every one of them reaching for the knife when wronged. Orestes has used the knife too, but he is the first to put it down, to run, and to reach for nothing. That is the whole revolution right there, on a muddy road in the rain. A cursed man, unarmed. And then the sea light changes, and the plain opens, and there it is, Athens, white on its rock. He climbs to the temple of Athena and wraps his arms around her image, a suppliant, done running. The Furies arrive behind him and stop at the edge of the sanctuary, circling, singing their low, binding song. They will not leave. He will not let go. Something has to break, and neither side can break it. So the city's goddess is called Athena, gray-eyed, weigher of causes, the one mind both sides might trust. Below her temple lies a bare hill of rock, the Euripides. Tomorrow, for the first time, mortals will judge blood. 12 citizens will climb that rock, and for the first time ever, a curse will be asked to argue. For the first time, a jury will decide a curse. Dawn comes gray over Athens, and the bare rock waits, cold and older than any throne. Below, the city holds its breath. Markets stand empty. Every street in Athens looks up at one hill. 12 citizens climb the stone steps, potters and farmers and sailors, ordinary hands about to hold a life. They have judged nothing before. Until this morning, the gods kept judgment of blood for themselves. Athena waits at the summit, gray eyes calm, watching the 12 take their places in a wide half circle. One by one, she swears them in, each man's hand pressed to the cold rock, each oath binding forever. She is a god. She could end this with a single word. Instead, she chooses something far harder. For ages, guilt was answered by whoever grieved loudest, and the answering never stopped. She will break that wheel. She will not rule alone. She hands the verdict to mortals, and the whole world tilts. She raises her spear and speaks, "Hear my decree, people of Athens, the first of all your trials." Her voice rolls across the summit. "On this rock I appoint judges, sworn and beyond bribery." Then come the words that change everything. "Here for all time to come, judgment shall rule above vengeance." And last, a promise. "Let this hill guard the city while the city sleeps." The decree settles into the stone. The rock is a rock no longer. It is a court. Orestes is led to stand apart on the bare summit, a worn traveler, the world's first accused man. He carries all of it: Tantalus's pride, Atreus's hatred, his father's war, his mother's shadow. 5 generations stand with him. Then the air darkens. The Furies rise onto the rock, ancient, patient, and entirely within their rights. They are the prosecution now, the oldest powers on earth arguing a case before mortals. Their voices layer over each other, low and certain, reciting the deed the whole world already knows. Their charge is simple. His mother is dead by his hand, and no law anywhere is older. They circle him slowly, robes trailing like smoke, demanding the price their kind has collected since time began. They summon Clytemnestra's shadow to the rock, a queen wronged, a mother unavenged, a debt still open. The 12 listen, pale. The Furies are not wrong. That is the terrible thing. They are never wrong. Then light climbs the steps. Apollo comes to stand beside the accused, golden and unshaken. The god of prophecy is the defense. The command was his. He will not let Orestes carry it alone. He reminds the court of Delphi of an oracle that left a son no path that was not ruin. He answers with Agamemnon, a king cut down in his own house, a father no court ever avenged. Fury and God trade arguments across the rock, the oldest law against the newest, and neither gives ground. Orestes says almost nothing. He has stopped running. Whatever the 12 decide, he will accept. He remembers the corridor in Mycenae, the long thread of his family pulling him to this exact stone. 12 ordinary faces wrestle with it. Farmers weighing gods, potters weighing a curse 5 generations deep. Athena listens and does not tip her hand. The verdict belongs to the mortals now. No thunder will decide this, no omen. Only the count of stones dropped by human hands. The sun crosses the sky. The arguments end. 2 bronze urns are set upon the stone. Each juror holds a single voting stone, condemn or spare, a curse reduced to a count. The Furies watch the urn. Apollo watches the jurors. Orestes closes his eyes and waits. The first juror rises and walks forward, his stone hidden inside his fist. 12 stones will fall one by one, and the count they make is a number no one on that rock expects. 12 stones will weigh a mother's blood. The first stone falls, bronze rings on bronze, and the sound rolls across a rock gone utterly silent. A second juror steps forward. His fist hovers over the 2 urns, one for death, one for life. Orestes watches every hand. His life is being counted out in stone, and he cannot read one face. He killed his mother. 12 strangers now hold that deed in their hands like a hot coal. The Furies coil at the edge of the court, patient as night. They have never once lost a killer. Apollo stands still beside the man he swore to save. Even a god's certainty can crack in silence like this. A third stone drops. A fourth. Each strike of bronze lands in Orestes' chest like a hammer on his ribs. He does not run. He has run for weeks across Greece, through temples, and there is nowhere left. The last juror climbs the steps, old and slow. 12 stones now wait in the dark of the urns. The whole hill leans in. Athens has never counted anything that mattered more than these 12 small stones. Athena orders the count. 2 officers tip the urns, and the stones spill glittering onto the marble table. They are laid in pairs, one against one, condemn against spare, death against life. The pairs keep matching. 6 stones to condemn, 6 stones to spare. The count is even, and the whole rock forgets to breathe. The oldest law on earth and the newest hang in perfect balance, and neither one will tip alone. No one knows what an even count means. No jury has faced this before. There is no rule to follow. Then Athena stands. Gray eyes sweep the jurors, the Furies, the trembling man. The goddess holds one final stone. She speaks her judgment plainly. Her vote goes to mercy. She casts her stone for Orestes. The stone lands with a small bright sound, and the balance of 1,000 years of blood tips, at last. Acquitted. The word moves through the crowd like wind through wheat. Orestes sways where he stands. On one side of the court, Apollo closes his eyes. On the other, 6 ancient faces go still. His hands are not clean. No verdict can wash them. That is not what has happened here today. What has happened is stranger. A city looked at a cursed man, weighed his deed, and chose his future. Not a god's whim, not a mother's knife, not a fury's hunger, a vote cast by ordinary mortal hands. The curse of the House of Atreus has devoured kings, queens, children, generations. It has never met a jury. Tantalus began it with a feast. 5 generations carried it. 12 stones and 1 goddess ended. Orestes lifts his face to the sun and breathes like a man surfacing from deep water. In Mycenae, the scepter of Pelops waits for a hand that is finally free to hold it. Then, a sound tears across the rock, older than the court, older than the gods who built it. The Furies have lost for the first time since the world was young, and their rage shakes the stones. Athena does not flinch. She turns to face the oldest powers on earth, and she is not reaching for a weapon. What remains when vengeance finally ends? She opens her hands, and the goddess of war offers the oldest powers on earth something no one has ever offered them. Not banishment, not war. A home carved beneath the very rock where the court has just voted against them. The Furies go still. In all the ages of the world, they have been feared. They have never been wanted. Athena speaks of a shrine in the deep stone, of honors and offerings, of a city that will never forget them. She asks them to guard Athens, to keep its oaths, to turn their terrible watchfulness into the roots of law. The storm in them wavers. Rage this old cannot be killed, but it can be given somewhere to live. Slowly, the black robes settle. The howling fades. Something older than the gods bows its head for the first time. The city answers with fire. Torches line the path from the rock, and all of Athens walks out into the night. By torchlight, the Furies descend toward the earth, and with every step their shadows soften into something new. Their claws become hands. Their howl becomes a low hum in the stone, the sound of oaths being kept. Orestes watches from the steps as the powers that hunted him across the world walk past him like honored guests. They take a new name, the Kindly Ones. Vengeance is not destroyed this night, it is folded inside the law. Their shrine glows beneath the rock of the court. Fury below, justice above, joined in the same stone forever. Orestes sails home free, the first son of this house in 5 generations, with no one left to kill. He walks home through the lion gate and nothing follows him in through the shadowed door. In the silent hall, he lifts the scepter of Pelops, and it is only wood and gold at last. Think of what it took. A god's command, a mother's fury, the oldest terrors on earth, and none of it was enough. What ended the curse was smaller than all of them. 12 citizens, 1 vote, a goddess willing to share her city. Centuries pass. Above the gate of Mycenae, the stone lions stare down an empty road that no army will ever climb. Grass grows in the great courtyard. Wind moves through the broken walls where kings once dreamed of empire. Sheep graze on the quiet slope where a queen once watched the sea for beacon fires. Travelers come to wonder at the stones. They ask who could have lifted them, and no one remembers the answer. But in Athens, the hill of Ares still stands, small, bare, easy to walk past without a glance. And for centuries after, real juries climbed that hill and sat in judgment where the goddess cast her vote. Greece remembered that rock as the birthplace of the jury, and every verdict there echoed that first morning. So ask the question one last time. Can a family cursed to answer blood with blood ever stop killing? Yes. But no sword ended it, no altar, no army camped for 10 years beneath the walls of Troy. The curse of Tantalus survived murder, war, sacrifice, and revenge. It could not survive the city that chose to judge. The curse that began at a king's terrible table ends quietly on an ordinary morning, the day a city votes. And far below the courtroom, in the warm dark, the kindly ones keep watch while the House of Atreus finally sleeps. The curse did not die by the sword, it died by the vote.